Hey there, Carrie Rhoades here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I am creating a card using the On the Beach stamp and die set from Fawn, and I'm going to be showing you 5 different ways to use Distress Oxides on this one card. So it's going to be lots of fun. I love Distress Oxides, so let's get started. Technique number 1 is ink blending a scene. So we're going to start by taping off the top of this card with some purple tape. It's a repositionable tape, so I can remove it easily. And I'm going to use the grid on my glass mat here so I can line up this tape and get a straight line. And I want to mask off about 1/3 of the top of this paper to be that sky. I'm using Distress Oxide inks. I'm starting with Abandoned Coral, and I'm inking up the bottom portion of this taped off section and just really burnishing that into the paper. I am using the traditional ink blending tools because I really want to saturate the paper with this color. So you'll see me use those throughout with this panel today. Coming in from the top is the picked raspberry, and the tip that I have to making ink blending work is to toggle between your colors. So I started with one color and went back over it again after adding the second color. My third color is Seedless Preserves. I'm just adding a little bit of that at the top, and you'll see me here again go back in with the picked raspberry after adding that color and then bringing the second color back in, and that's just a great way to get a smooth blend. So I did that repeatedly till I got the look that I want. Technique number 2 is drawing or coloring on your Distress Oxide with water. So I have an ink blending brush here. So this, or a water blending brush right here, it has water inside the barrel, and I'm using that to color clouds onto my sunset ink blended background here. So I have a paper towel on the side. If I get too much water on the end of that brush, I can dab it off. If I pick up a lot of color, I can rub that off on the paper towel. That way I don't transfer it over to the next cloud that I'm going to color in. And the shape of these is not really crucial that you get them perfect because you're just going to see them slightly. So that is one fun thing I learned to do from watching a video by Ashley Tucker. So if you're watching, Ashley, thank you so much. I love making clouds on my ink blended backgrounds, and I appreciate you sharing that with me. All right, so I'm pulling off the tape to reveal that next section. And for this part, we're going to tear a piece of masking paper down the middle and pick one side to be the bottom half. We'll peel off that backing paper, and what I'm doing is masking off the area that will be the beach or the sand. And I'm going to have the biggest portion of my card be that sand area. So my water area is going to be a little bit smaller than where the beach will be. And I just needed a piece of tape to kind of hold that down. And then I'm going to mask off my sky. Now when I mask this off, I'm leaving like a hair or a half of a hair of that sunset showing. And now I'm going to ink blend my ocean with Tumbled glass, and then I'm going to go in with my darker color, which is Salty Ocean. And I'm having it be kind of an ombre effect, so where the water touches the sky, that's where I want it to be the darkest. So that's why I'm using the Salty Ocean towards the top part of this section, and you'll see me really come in and make that area at the tape line darkest. And when these, like a sunset and the sky overlap the tiniest bit, it gave it a really dark line, and I like that because it makes it have a 3D effect where the water is really set back in there. So you'll see. You can decide if it has that effect or not, but I like it. I did not want a white line there at all. So I peeled off that mask, and I'm bringing in the other half that I tore off the top, and that will mask off the water. Now it didn't quite cover the whole thing, so I'll just want to be careful when I'm ink blending my sand. And I'm using tea dye ink for my lightest color, and then ground espresso for my darkest color. and I was peeling up the mask a little bit when I did this, so I really tried to use swiping down motions instead of trying to go up over that paper. This is supposed to be ground espresso, but I had the wrong sponge for that. So I switched those out real quick, and then I'm ink blending the ground espresso from the bottom towards the top. And I just wanted the darkest portion of the sand to be at the part where your eye sees first in the sand. That would be the shaded area in my opinion. I'm not, I don't know, the most clever at making scenes, so hopefully that works out and makes sense. So technique number 3 is to splatter this with water. So I'm using the Distress sprayer. I love the fine mist you can get when you squeeze the trigger all the way, and I love the big splatters you can get when you squeeze that trigger halfway. So you just spray it, let that set for a second, and blot it up with a paper towel. All right, technique number 4, I'm gonna cover up my everything but my sand, and I'm going to splatter this area with Distress Oxide. So I'll just put a little bit of that ink on my glass mat, spray it with water. I'm going to pick that up with a small paintbrush and just tap that against my finger to get the darker color ink splatters to give texture to my sand. So some of the sand has been splattered with water, some of it's splattered with ink, so I'll have the dark splatters and the light splatters, and that really gives that some texture and dimension. And then we'll just dry the whole thing real quick with my heat gun. And there is my background, and the 5th technique will come up at the very end of this video. So now I'm putting a little bit of white paint on my glass mat. This is whipped cream acrylic paint by Fun Stamper's Journey. I'm coming in with a dry brush, and right where the water meets the sand, I'm going to stipple on some of this paint. So stipple means that I'm going straight down and straight up with my brush, and it's gonna kind of spread the bristles out, and they're nice and dry, so you're getting that little bit of fine dots where the bristles have spread out, and then you're getting some areas that are more concentrated where the bristles have stuck together. So it gives it a really nice organic look. What I'm going to do is let that dry, and I'll come back and do a second coat later on. I have stamped all my images with VersaFine Onyx black ink on Bristol smooth paper, and I've used a second stamp set called Life is Good to stamp my little crab. And I'm coloring these in with my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. I have put the colors of the markers at the top of the screen for you so you can see which ones I have used. And I have also used a blender pen on most of the images here, and that is sold separately from the sets of Zig markers. It is fabulous. I can't get enough of the blender pen. If you don't have it and you have these markers, I highly recommend it. So you can see here I'm coloring this ball blue, and then I'm just using the marker to outline the section, and I'm blending that out with the blender pen. The blender pen is number 999. It's not on the screen there, but it just smooths out those edges, and you can get that variation in your color from light to dark and have those light areas in the middle, like I'm doing here on my little coconut drink. My tip for using this is you want to color over the ink that you're trying to blend out. Color over that first to draw that out. Now some of these teeny tiny parts, I did not blend them out at all. The straw, the umbrella, the sun on the sunscreen bottle, I just colored them directly. But everything else I am blending out either with a lighter color marker or the blender, or both. So the sunscreen bottle, so cute. I love it. All right, so then we have some teeny tiny seashells that I'm just using a dark color and blending that out with the lighter color, except the starfish, I used 2 pink colors. I love the kind of pinkish coral look that it gave it. So cute. All right, for the fox, who, don't you always want a fox on your beach scene? Of course you do. So cute. I'm using brown Scarlet Red, which is a red that has kind of an orangish tint to it, and then orange itself to blend that out, and a little bit of the blender pen as well. So that's going to give my fox that, I don't know, that foxy color, that reddish orange with a little hint of brown. That brown marker does I feel have a little bit of an orange feel to it. So it works really well for this fox. And I didn't do anything to the white. Sometimes I like to do a little gray on there for a shadow, but I didn't. On the crab, I outlined the whole thing with red, and I'm blending that out with that scarlet red that has a little bit of orange to it and the blender. And that colors all my images. And now I'm going to get out the coordinating dies and die cut all these pieces to have for my scene. I'm going to set those aside and come back and do that second layer of the white paint because it's dried now, just to intensify that. And also doing a second layer kind of builds up the texture, and I love the texture of it, how it sits up on top, and it has a different feel than all the rest of the paint. Also, the Fun Stamper's Journey paint is matte finish, so it goes really well with the Distress Oxide. I'm bringing in the Palm Tree and Hammock die set from Fawn to die cut some palm trees, coconuts, and yeah, the treetops as well for the accent pieces on this card. And then after I die cut those, I felt like they just needed a little something. I mean, it's a sunset scene, so I felt like these might have a little shadow. So I'm using my markers just to add a little line and blending those out with my blender so you don't see that harsh marker line. And that'll give them a little bit of shading that I think really helps bring them to life and make them look like they're in a sunset scene. So the green on here on the kiwi slice paper, and then I'm using some deep brown on my cocoa powder cardstock for the tree and the coconut as well. And then once I have those colored, I'm going to lay them onto my scene, just laying them on for like a visual reference. I'm not gluing them on yet because I'm going to take out this teeny tiny bird stamp from the Life is Good stamp set and stamp those with my Seedless Preserves Distress Oxide in the Sky, so they kind of blend in with that sunset and don't look too prominent. And then I can see them above those trees because I came in and laid those in. I also use them as a guide to stamp these little hills of sand from our On the Beach stamp set, and that just grounds my trees so they have like a little sand dune to be sat upon. So I'll go ahead and glue those down on their little sand dune. They're leaning in a little bit, just like, you know, palm trees do, and using liquid glue to attach those, making the scene for my little fox. So I'll go ahead and glue him to his beach towel there, and I'm just going to get the elements of my card ready and lay them in place so I can figure out where I want to put my sentiment. So I'm going to cluster the beach ball, the sunscreen, and the sunglasses together like that. So I'm going to glue those together, and then this is just kind of like the stuff that the fox brought to the beach with him. So I'll set that by his towel. I love this cluster. I think it turned out really cute. And the sunglasses, you can also use the sunglasses to be put on these critters. There's another pair that face the other direction for the fox. So if you're going to put them on the fox, you'd want to use the other pair. This pair goes with the bear. So I've just cut a slit in the claw of the crab so I can insert my little coconut drink. I thought he's either bringing the drink to the fox or he's stealing it away from him. That's my thought. If you've read the little critter books, I love that there's always like a little mouse in the scene or something like that. So that's how I envision this fox. So I picked out a sentiment from that set. It says, hey foxy friend, and I'm going to stamp that on the base of my card. Oh, it says to my foxy friend. And I'm going to use that same ground espresso. So I'm going to ink this up quite a few times to intensify the color, but also build up that pigment so that I can go ahead and heat emboss this. I did pre-treat my paper with an anti-static tool before I stamped it so that this embossing powder is only going to stick to that sentiment. And then once I tap off the excess and pour that back into my container, I've only made a tiny little mess there, I can go ahead and heat up my heat gun so it's nice and hot before I bring it to my paper to melt that powder. And then once it is heated up, it melts it so quickly and smoothly. Love it. Then we can go ahead and attach all those images that we previously had just placed on there to figure out where to put our sentiment. So I'm gluing down my fox right to the paper, but then the beach ball cluster there, that's so cute, I'm going to put that on with some foam squares. and I used quite a few so I could put them where the different pieces of this cluster meet to help hold it together. So there we have that. We'll bring in the crab, which I'm also mounting to the card with some foam squares, and he'll go over to the side right here. And off camera, once I stuck my little tiny seashells down, I realized that the placement was not great on the seashell in between the crab and the sentiment. So I did end up lifting and scooting the crab over a tiny bit and repositioning this second kind of dark pink shell. So if you notice, this looks a little bit different than the finished picture. That's why I had to scoot it over a little bit. But there's my shells. And then we're going to mount this to a top folding note card that measures 4 1/4 by 11, scored at 5 1/2, and I'm mounting that with some foam tape. So it will have a dark brown border all the way around. I liked the dark outer edge that helps draw your eye into the center and gives more of that feel that it's getting to be nighttime with the dark edge. So there you have the card. And because it's a dark card, I felt like it needed something on the inside. So that brings me to actually the 5th technique, technique number 5. We're going to be doing some ink smooshing with the 2 blue colors we used for the water. So we have our Salty Ocean and Tumbled Glass. I smooshed it right onto my mat, sprayed it with water, and then I'm just going to tap my paper into that, and it gives it just this real watery look, like you're looking down on some light pool of water. And I am spraying this with my Distress sprayer and blotting that up to get some white speckles in it. And then I'm going to repeat the same exact thing, picking up more layers of color, drying it with my heat tool. Once it gets a little bit dry, I'm going to spritz it with my water, dab off the excess with my paper towel. If you ever get a really high concentration of ink where you don't want it, you can pick that up with the paper towel as well. And the ink splatters, you can see, just give that like a look of depth. And then I'm going to do the same thing I did on the sand. I'm going to pick up some of that extra ink because I had so much and splatter that over the background, giving it more depth because it'll have the darker spots and the lighter spots, which I love. So that is the background. I've made quite a mess, but it was so much fun, and I love how this watery background turned out. It'll be the perfect thing for the inside of my card. A nice surprise when you open it up. So I'm just finishing that off by heating it up, and it'll be ready to go on the inside of my card. I heated the back and the front to prevent too much warping. And to clean this off, I just sprayed it with water and then wiped it up with a paper towel. I'm going to stamp a sentiment on the inside because the outside said, "To my foxy friend," and now the inside says, "Have a happy birthday." I'm going to glue that on to the inside of my card, actually using a tape runner to put this on the inside of my card so I could I think a wet-ish piece of paper with wet glue can make it warp more, so that's why I use this strong tape runner adhesive on the inside. And then I happen to have an extra seashell laying around that I had colored and not used on a different project, so I just tucked that into the bottom of this card and have a little something cute there and a big space to write a happy birthday message. I hope that you've enjoyed this card. I hope that you pull out Distress Oxides or get some to play with because they are so much fun. And if you like this card, please give this video a thumbs up. I'd love to hear from you and interact with you, so feel free to leave a comment below. And if you're new here, please subscribe. I have new videos every week and I love sharing my creations with you. Thanks so much. Bye.